Ethan Walker, a 50-year-old automotive operations manager from Calgary, Canada, appeared to live a comfortable and stable life with his Malaysian wife, Nur Aina Rahman. The couple had been married for nearly 2 decades and owned a cozy 2-story home in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Vancouver. Ethan worked for a major auto parts supplier, managing regional logistics and procurement for multiple dealerships across British Columbia. His annual income averaged around $70,000, supplemented by performance incentives that occasionally brought in an extra $10,000 to $15,000 per year. Aina, 45, worked part-time as a freelance accountant, handling bookkeeping for small local businesses and earning roughly $20,000 annually. The couple did not have children together, though Ethan had a son from a previous marriage who lived in Toronto. Outwardly, their marriage appeared stable, 2 hardworking professionals leading an ordinary suburban life. But behind closed doors, tensions had begun to grow. According to Ethan's co-workers, he often confided about his wife's increasing dissatisfaction with their financial situation. Aina wanted a lifestyle that reflected success, exotic vacations, designer handbags, and luxury home upgrades, things that stretched their budget beyond comfort. Friends later described Aina as ambitious and image-conscious, often comparing herself to wealthier acquaintances she followed on social media. Her Instagram was filled with pictures of fine dining, jewelry, and travel destinations that didn't quite match their actual means. Unknown to Ethan, Aina had been exploring alternative ways to improve their financial security, methods that didn't involve taking on more work or cutting back on expenses. Investigators would later discover that her laptop contained extensive online searches about life insurance benefits, inheritance rights, and spousal financial claims in Canada. In August 2023, Aina suggested that they review their life insurance coverage, claiming it was a responsible step for their future. Their existing policies only covered $50,000 each, barely enough to pay off part of their mortgage. Aina argued that they needed at least 10 times that amount to ensure financial protection if something happened to either of them. At first, Ethan resisted, pointing out that they were already struggling to balance their mortgage, bills, and rising living costs. But after weeks of discussion, he agreed. With Aina's encouragement, they met with a financial advisor, someone Aina had found online, to set up new policies. Ethan took out a $500,000 life insurance plan, while Aina's coverage increased to $300,000, keeping the arrangement balanced in appearance. Medical exams conducted in October 2023 confirmed both were in good health, and the policies were approved. The couple's monthly premiums rose by nearly $500, adding further financial pressure to their household. Ethan reportedly joked to a friend that he was worth more dead than alive after signing the paperwork. Around the same time, Aina's internet activity took a darker turn. Digital forensic experts later uncovered searches from her phone and tablet containing terms like substances that mimic heart attacks, natural poisons, and untraceable causes of death. Her browsing history revealed deep dives into articles about toxins found in household products, including antifreeze chemicals and plant-based cardiac poisons. Most notably, she researched ethylene glycol, a toxic compound found in automotive coolant. Her notes detailed how the substance caused symptoms that initially resembled intoxication or flu before progressing to fatal kidney failure within days. She also studied dosage levels, detection challenges during autopsies, and how long traces remained in the body. By December 2023, her plan was in motion. Surveillance footage later reviewed by investigators showed Aina visiting multiple auto supply stores across Vancouver, purchasing antifreeze in small quantities and paying in cash to avoid leaving a paper trail. She wore sunglasses and a hat during these visits, behavior that, in hindsight, suggested deliberate concealment. At home, Aina began introducing tiny, diluted doses of antifreeze into Ethan's food and beverages. The method was subtle and designed to mimic a slow-developing illness. Over several weeks, Ethan began feeling increasingly unwell, complaining of nausea, fatigue, and abdominal pain, but attributed his symptoms to seasonal flu and work-related stress. Ana's research grew increasingly meticulous. She studied how poisons were detected during autopsies, how symptoms developed over time, and how dosage could be calculated according to body weight. She also learned that certain toxins, including ethylene glycol, were rarely checked for in standard blood panels or post-mortem tests unless specifically requested. By December 2023, Ana had finalized her plan. Over the course of several days, she purchased multiple bottles of automotive coolant from various car supply shops across Vancouver. Each transaction was paid in cash to avoid leaving a record, and she made sure to visit different locations to prevent suspicion. Surveillance cameras later captured her entering stores wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, subtle attempts to conceal her identity that went unnoticed at the time. Her method was deliberate and patient. She began adding tiny amounts of antifreeze into her husband's food and drinks, coffee, soups, and even smoothies, just enough to cause mild illness, but not enough to kill immediately. The intent was slow, cumulative poisoning that would appear natural and undetectable. By early January 2024, Ethan began feeling unwell. At first, it was minor fatigue, headaches, and occasional dizziness that he attributed to winter flu or exhaustion from work. Ana played the part of a concerned and caring wife, encouraging him to rest while continuing to help him recover with homemade meals and drinks. As weeks passed, Ethan's condition worsened. He became increasingly confused, his speech slowed, and he struggled to focus at work. His supervisor at the auto parts company noticed the decline, describing him later as not himself, forgetful, sluggish, and pale. Despite his obvious illness, Ana discouraged him from seeking urgent medical attention, assuring him it was just a stubborn virus. When Ethan finally visited his doctor, basic lab results showed minor irregularities, but nothing that explained the rapid decline. His physician, unaware of any toxic exposure, diagnosed him with possible stress-related fatigue and recommended rest. Ana subtly influenced the doctor's decisions by emphasizing financial strain and requesting to avoid unnecessary testing. Her calm, rational demeanor kept suspicion away. By late January 2024, Ethan's health had collapsed. He suffered from severe abdominal pain, frequent vomiting, and sudden disorientation that alarmed those around him. Friends urged him to go to the hospital, but Ana insisted on managing his care at home, claiming hospital bills would only make things worse. The end came swiftly. In the early morning of February 7th, 2024, Ana called emergency services, her voice shaking as she reported that her husband had collapsed and wasn't breathing. Paramedics arrived at the couple's home at 11:45 a.m., finding Ethan unresponsive in the bedroom. Despite resuscitation attempts, he was declared dead at 12:58 p.m. at Vancouver General Hospital. The emergency staff noted that Ethan's wife appeared devastated. She cried uncontrollably, telling doctors about his recent flu-like symptoms, blaming stress and poor diet for his sudden cardiac arrest. Given his recent medical visits and lack of visible injuries, no autopsy was immediately ordered. The initial death certificate listed the cause of death as heart failure, possibly related to hypertension and exhaustion. Within a week, Ana contacted Pacific Guardian Life Insurance to file a claim for her husband's $500,000 policy. She submitted the required documents, including the death certificate, and the company began processing the paperwork as routine. Everything seemed in order, at least for a while. However, doubts began to surface among Ethan's friends and family. His co-workers questioned how a man who had recently passed a company health screening could die so suddenly. His adult son, Tyler, grew particularly suspicious after recalling their last phone call in December, when Ethan had sounded upbeat and healthy. Tyler contacted local authorities, insisting that his father's death didn't make sense. The Vancouver Police Department assigned Detective Laura Chun to review the circumstances. Detective Chin's initial review raised several red flags. Ethan was relatively young, with no severe medical history, and his symptoms, confusion, vomiting, and seizures, didn't align neatly with cardiac arrest. She formally requested a post-mortem examination, citing the newly discovered life insurance policy and family concerns as justification. On February 28, 2024, a full autopsy was performed by Dr. Raymond Lim, chief forensic pathologist for British Columbia. The examination revealed no signs of physical trauma, but blood and tissue samples were taken for detailed toxicology analysis. Dr. Lim's test screened for over 200 potential toxins, including alcohols, drugs, and industrial chemicals. What he found would change the course of the investigation forever. The toxicology report, finalized in mid-March 2024, revealed shocking results. Traces of ethylene glycol were found throughout Ethan's bloodstream, as well as in samples from his liver and kidneys. The levels detected were consistent with prolonged exposure, meaning the substance had been administered repeatedly over several weeks. Forensic pathologists concluded that the final, fatal dose had been ingested within 2 days of Ethan's death. Following these findings, Dr. Raymond Lim officially amended the death certificate, changing the cause of death from cardiac arrest to homicide by ethylene glycol poisoning. The case was immediately escalated to the Vancouver Police Homicide Unit, with Detective Laura Chun continuing as lead investigator. Detectives began reconstructing how Ethan had come into contact with the toxin. The investigation quickly focused on Aina, his wife, who had exclusive access to his meals, drinks, and medications. Combined with her potential financial gain from a $500,000 life insurance policy, Aina soon became the primary suspect. A search warrant was executed at the couple's home. Inside the garage, investigators discovered several partially used containers of antifreeze, despite the fact that Ethan's vehicle did not require coolant replacement during the winter season. The timing of the purchases matched the weeks leading up to Ethan's death. Digital forensics specialists then examined Aina's phone and laptop, uncovering a detailed pattern of online activity. She had spent weeks reading about poison detection, dosage measurement, and the biochemical effects of ethylene glycol on human organs. The timestamps of these searches aligned precisely with Ethan's worsening symptoms. Financial analysis revealed that Aina had been struggling under the weight of mounting debt, including overdue credit card bills and a failing personal loan. Investigators concluded that the insurance payout would have completely erased her financial troubles while leaving her with significant profit. On March 25, 2024, Aina was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and insurance fraud. During police questioning, she denied any involvement, insisting that her husband's death was due to stress-related heart failure. But when confronted with digital evidence and the toxicology findings, she invoked her right to legal counsel and refused further comment. Her defense attorney later announced plans to challenge the toxicology report, suggesting Ethan's exposure to antifreeze could have been accidental, perhaps through contact with automotive chemicals at work. However, investigators swiftly disproved this theory. Ethan's job involved inventory management, not hands-on mechanical repair, and there was no record of him handling antifreeze in the months before his death. The prosecution presented a compelling narrative of premeditation and greed. They introduced witnesses, friends and acquaintances of Aina, who testified that she had frequently complained about money problems and had openly resented her husband's cautious spending. One friend recalled Aina joking that life would be easier without him around, a statement that gained chilling significance during trial. Medical experts provided critical testimony, explaining how ethylene glycol poisoning unfolds in stages, first resembling intoxication, then leading to renal failure and cardiac collapse. They emphasized that the toxin must be ingested repeatedly to reach lethal levels, proving that Ethan's death could not have been accidental. Insurance investigators also took the stand, confirming that Aina had contacted their office several times after Ethan's death, pressing for immediate payment and citing financial hardship. These communications, along with her online research into beneficiary rights, strengthened the prosecution's argument that money was the central motive. After a 3-week trial, the jury returned a guilty verdict on all counts in September 2024. The evidence of careful planning, emotional manipulation, and calculated execution left no room for doubt. The jury deliberated for nearly 8 hours before returning its verdict. Guilty on all counts, including first-degree murder and insurance fraud. Under British Columbia law, the murder conviction carried a mandatory life sentence with no possibility of parole. During the sentencing phase, Ethan's daughter, Claire, delivered a deeply emotional victim impact statement. Fighting through tears, she spoke about the devastation of losing her father and the unbearable betrayal of discovering that Aina, the woman he trusted completely, had orchestrated his slow and deliberate death. Claire described Ethan as a kind and cautious man who had no idea that the person caring for him was secretly administering poison. The court sentenced Aina Rahman to life imprisonment without parole for murder, along with an additional 10-year term for the insurance fraud conviction. The judge ordered the sentences to run consecutively, ensuring that Aina would never be eligible for release. Following her conviction, the life insurance payout was immediately revoked. The Northern Shield Life Insurance Company also initiated civil proceedings to recover the costs associated with their internal investigation. Canadian law explicitly prohibits beneficiaries from receiving life insurance proceeds if they are found responsible for the insured person's death. Ethan's estate, including his share of their Vancouver home and his retirement savings, was transferred to his daughter through probate court. The couple's house on Maple Grove Avenue was eventually sold, with Aina's portion of the sale proceeds held in escrow pending the outcome of possible restitution claims. The shocking case prompted Northern Shield Life to revise its internal policies, particularly for high-value life insurance plans. The company introduced stricter verification procedures and mandatory waiting periods for any policy exceeding $400,000 purchased by married clients, to reduce the risk of fraud and motive-related crimes. Aina Rahman is now serving her life sentence at Fraser Valley Women's Correctional Center in British Columbia. Since her incarceration, she has maintained her innocence, filing multiple appeals challenging both her conviction and sentence, all of which have so far been rejected. Meanwhile, Dr. Raymond Lim, Ethan's longtime physician, later testified at a medical conference about the lessons learned from the case. He stressed the importance of recognizing early indicators of poisoning, especially when patients exhibit unexplained neurological or gastrointestinal symptoms. His experience inspired the creation of new hospital protocols across Canada for automatic toxicology testing in suspicious cases. The Vancouver Police Department also adopted the Ethan Clark case as a model in its training program for homicide investigators. It became a landmark example of how financial motives can drive subtle, prolonged, and complex crimes, and how proper toxicological analysis can expose hidden homicides that initially appear natural. Ethan Clark was laid to rest in Mountain View Cemetery in Vancouver. His funeral was attended by colleagues, friends, and family members who remembered him as a generous man with a quiet sense of humor. To honor his legacy, his daughter Claire established the Ethan Clark Memorial Fund, a small charity at his workplace that provides emergency financial assistance to employees facing medical crises, keeping his spirit of kindness alive even after his tragic death.